Hey, it's Bryce here. Just wanted to let you know that today's episode is going to sound a little different than the rest of them, some for good reasons and unfortunately some for bad. While Jessica and I are very, very excited to get this one out to you for a lot of awesome reasons, in particular our special guest for the day, we also ran into some technical difficulties while recording that we did not realize were happening until after the recording was done. It is what it is. We put in a lot of work to make it better, so hopefully we can all make lemonade out of lemons. And now on with the show. Welcome in. Thank you for checking out Beer and Bourbon Studios today. This is the Game and Drink Connoisseurs podcast. I am one half of your game and drink connoisseurs. Unfortunately, for X, Y, and Z reasons, Jessica cannot make it today, but that's all right. We have a big surprise for you today. I'm getting some help from a host who has a podcast that you've heard us talk about on the show before. I'm a big fan of it. He's super awesome for doing the show with me today. Doesn't look as good in Daisy Dukes in the crop top, I'm sure, but I've never met him in person before, so I don't know. From the Level Up Board Gaming Podcast, Patrick, how you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, Bryce, and believe me, the pleasure is all mine. We've mentioned you guys on Level Up as well, and I am envious of your skills with editing. It always sounds crystal clear.
You're too kind.
You guys, I'm the one in awe today, believe me.
No, man, I thank you so much for being on the show. I'm very excited to have you on. And you're here, you're not here at Beer and Bourbon Studios, but you're chiming in remotely. This is the first time we've ever done this on the show, so it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. Today, we're doing another top 10 list, 10 games plus 2 more that we feel deserve another chance. These are games that we played and either we didn't like them or they just didn't hit with us the way they should have or the way we thought they were going to. However, we're not ready to throw them in the scrap pile just yet. As always, we have something delicious to drink. Our good friend Patrick here comes from Western Pennsylvania. I figured we would grab something from Western Pennsylvania. Today we have Jim's Signature Roast by O'Neill Coffee. This is a signature roast all the way from the 1950s, so we're drinking a little bit of history here from what looks to be a pretty well-established coffee joint out of your neck of the woods, so this should be exciting.
Looking forward to it.
We've been chatting a bit for a couple of months now. I stumbled across your podcast by accident, and I'm really glad I did. It's a good podcast. So once you're done listening to this episode, go on over and check out the Level Up Board Gaming Podcast. Patrick, what's the show about? What do you guys do?
Absolutely. So when we started out, we had this we love our 8-bit music. I was like, okay, what can we incorporate? Because, podcasts, you guys actually have a theme going. What with the game and drink, you tie in the drinks very well. I was skeptical at first. And then when I started listening to episodes, I was like, oh, okay, this is like a half and half deal. They sink into it. And I learned stuff, which feels icky, but I learned things when I listened to you guys. I was just like, I like this 8-bit music and I like old Nintendo games, and that kind of segued into board gaming. So what the heck, we're going to go with that. And then I thought that I had this stroke of genius. I was like, ooh, we're going to call our reviews the 8-bit breakdown. And we're going to look at 8 different facets of the game. And we still have the music going. We still like to do our 8-bit theme, but the show is, you know what? We take pride in the fact that it's about what we want to play. We try and play things that are newer because people tune in. They want to hear about some of the new stuff that's coming out and some of the hotness that they're thinking about buying. But we do have level back episodes where we'll look at games that are 5 years old or earlier than that. We do have a tendency in our recent plays to talk about games that they're a little off the beaten path sometimes. So we try to be astray from, what's a good way to phrase this? We try to differentiate ourselves from a lot of other popular podcasts in that we're not always talking about the next big thing. Let me tell you what, I listen to 3 or 4 podcasts religiously, and there was a time before we started where I was sitting in the car and I download a pod. You wake up in the morning and says, hey, these new podcasts are up. And I'm just going to throw a game out there. I'll say Root. This podcast, their new episode, and they're going to be talking about Root. All right, that's awesome. Then the next day I wake up and I get an episode of Secret Cabal. It's my favorite one. And they're talking about Root. Okay, fine, whatever. Well, there's a show tomorrow. I'm sure they'll have something cool to say, maybe a different game that I'm looking forward to, and they're talking about Root. And I was like, okay, so everybody's basically going after the newest, hottest thing, which makes sense. You want to get the listeners, but we pride ourselves in not always doing that, and sometimes looking at a simpler game or something off the beaten path. So that's sort of what you can expect when you listen to us. It's Scott and I like to think at this point the banter is pretty decent, and we've gotten a lot of help from contributors over the years. Now, we've had some folks that'll give us like a segment, a themed segment, history in game, or a location in the world and how it ties into a game. And now they'll actually join us for full episodes. So just Scott and myself, we went about 100 episodes just like that. And ever since then, it's very rare that it's just the two of us. So we're kind of a team now, and we're having a great time doing it.
I had said on our show when we gave you guys a shout that it was a board game podcast for board gamers. That much is true, but I want to add something to that. It's a podcast for people who like the old classic FM morning radio shows as well. You guys have a great FM morning radio show vibe that is just so pleasant to listen to. You guys all work and vibe well together. So it's been a real treat to listen to it. I'm not just blowing smoke. It's a good podcast. So once you're done listening to this episode, go on over and check out the Level Up Board Gaming Podcast. Patrick, I'm going to assume you play a lot more games than I do, just by looking at your Facebook page and the fact that you guys have hundreds of episodes. How many times does this happen to you? How many times do you look at a game and just go like, for whatever reason, I don't like this and I should, or everyone else likes it, but I don't?
I have to admit, it is rare. It's very rare. I'm a lover of games, and even games that aren't, we'll say, objectively good, or that most people would say that's not a good game. I tend to like games, and my enjoyment of games oftentimes come from the people that I'm playing with, and the interaction, the camaraderie, and the food that we have set up. So if we're playing 4 games on a game day, we just did a game day yesterday. We do local meetups and whatnot, and we had one at local shop, and I could have been playing anything, and I was going to have a great time. So fortunately, when I'm doing my tabletop gaming, oftentimes I'm in an atmosphere whereby everything is set up to work out. So even if the game's not great, I'm having such a good time that sometimes it's hard for me to objectively say, oh, that game wasn't fun for me. However, there have been plenty of times, even rare as it may be, I play enough games that there are plenty of times where I'll finish a game and go, yeah, that just, I didn't see what everyone was fussing about, or that one just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah, that happens to me quite a bit, and we're going to talk about 10 of them today. Well, 11, actually. Unlike last time where me and Jessica shared a top 10 list, me and Patrick each have our own, but we're still going to give you an additional 2 games, one from each of us, that kind of personifies today's theme the most. We are recording this at night, which is something I usually don't do. So I do not have a cup of coffee in my hand right now, but I have been drinking the coffee all day today in preparation for this, so it's fresh on my mind. So we're not going to pour ourselves a first cup this time. However, Jessica is still helping us out today. She's going to tell you all you need to know about Jim's Signature Roast by O'Neill Coffee Roasters. When we come back, we'll be diving right into our top 10 plus 2 lists of games that we feel deserve another chance.
O'Neill Coffee has been a long-standing staple of Northwest Pennsylvania's Shenango Valley since 1951. For the last 73 years, long before words like artisan and gourmet were used to describe it, Jim O'Neill and family have worked tirelessly to make the smoothest, richest cups of coffee anyone in Pennsylvania, and now the world, has ever tasted. From their humble beginnings of one man making deliveries in a pickup truck to their more impressive status in the world of coffee today, O'Neill has expanded from one brew to several. Ranging in a variety of different roasts, flavors, and blends, there's something here for everyone. You can even find a wide variety of tea and hot chocolate as well. No matter the brew, O'Neill's has maintained a dedication to craft and care for their products and customers throughout, which is proven by their long-standing popularity. Today's brew is the one that started it all. Jim's Signature Roast is a mild-bodied medium roast designed to appeal to both avid and casual coffee drinkers alike. Using only Arabica beans from Central America, Jim's original 1951 classic offers up an exceptionally smooth coffee with sweet undertones and a toasted kick throughout, with a flavor that is present but never overpowering. This brew aims to give coffee drinkers a solidly reliable coffee in whatever style they prefer. Whether you're adding a little cream and sugar, sprucing it up big time with a bunch of caramels, foams, and espresso shots, or simply just drinking it black like they did in 1951, Jim's signature roast claims to be able to hold its own. But does it really, though? We'll find out soon enough. In the meantime, if Jim's signature roast has piqued your interest, you can learn more about it and all the other coffees, teas, and hot chocolates O'Neill Coffee has to offer by visiting o'neillcoffee.com. That is, of course, sometime after listening to this show.
All right, so top 10 plus 2 games we feel deserve another chance. Like last time for me anyway, this list is in no real order except my number one, my topmost game. Patrick, did you put your list in any type of order?
Not especially, except for my extra. My plus one game is a little bit unique compared with the others, but I'm not going from like my number one on this list is not, oh, this is the one I really need to give another chance. Just a random assortment.
Yes, same. Are these games that you didn't like? Because I picked all games that I've played once, maybe twice, and just didn't like them. What are you basing yours off of?
Well, it's from a variety of things. So when I thought second chance games, and this is before you said well, actually, I think you did specify games that you didn't like and wanted to give a second chance. And I, for whatever reason, read that as games that I just want to give a second chance to. So there are a few on the list that are I really like this. And one of them on there, I'll quantify. It is the number one in two different categories in my brain. It is the best X and the best Y game. And I'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Fantastic. Okay, well, you are our guest. Why don't you get us started with your first game that you feel needs another shot?
Game number 1.
Bryce, I'm a 4X guy. I like big battles. I like space battles. I like building up technology. I like expanding and exploiting and exterminating and all whatever the other X is. I like that. I like whenever a game gives you this talk above the table. And what I mean by that is think of a game like Diplomacy. What's happening on the board? That's only part of the game. It's what's happening between the players, the table talk, that's really going to shape the next round of play. I love that. I love when there's intrigue and politicking going on at the table. So when I had the opportunity to learn and play Voidfall, I was so excited for it. This one we actually played at Origins, and one of our contributors on the show, well, he's a friend of the show, Sir Jack, he learned the game for us, which is phenomenal. Because let me tell you, I had this thing on the table, cracked open the lid, and there are 5 rule books in the scenario books, rule books, you name it. Dude, the page, it's not a page of references like the reference guide. It's pages of symbols, references. So I was like, I don't have to learn this. Sir Jack's going to learn it. He's going to teach it to us at Origins. This is going to be epic. So we leave Origins. We'll say Saturday night. We all get back to the hotel a little bit early. It was 6. We just took over the cafe area, bumped a whole bunch of tables together, ordered some pizzas. It was this is going to be the best night of gaming. The pizzas come. Everybody's full, and the game is not even finished being set up yet. It's that complex. Ooh. Zach's looking over the various scenario setup and whatnot, and we get to playing, and it's a fine Euro, but it is just that. It is a Euro game. There was virtually no table talk. There's virtually no interaction among the players. These things that I was expecting to find in a 4X game just were not there. And in fact, for things like extermination was completely absent. There was no table talk going on. You were doing your own thing on your own player board in your own little safe section of space the whole time. So it was this huge letdown. So why do I want to revisit it? There are so many people that absolutely love it. This thing's almost cracked that top 100 on BGG that we don't give any credit, right? It's almost in there. So it's got to have a fan base that loves it, and it does. And part of me feels like I'm supposed to be one of them. And I kind of want to give it a second chance just to find out if maybe I missed something. Maybe we try one of the other scenarios and do things a little bit differently than the first time. Maybe we unlock the magic that way. But it did not hit at Origins, I'll tell you that much.
It doesn't sound like I would want to sit down and play it. I listened to your episode about Voidfall, and I was actually on the fence about the game for our house, and after listening to your episode, I was like, nah.
See, I feel like we swayed you in the right direction. That was the objective. I could not convince people that you should spend $150 on a game that's going to take you a month to figure out.
It's just the setup time. Like when you have a game that takes that long to set up and then you sit down and you're ready to play, a lot of the times the setup has burned you out. And then you have to learn the fucking thing. And then you're like, oh my God. By the time you're done learning it, you're like, can we do literally anything else?
Anything.
Anything else.
But I am definitely willing to give it another shot.
All right. First game I want to talk about today on games I feel deserve a second chance. This is the game Mule. This apparently is a very popular video game from the 1980s. Mm-hmm. And, it's still around in some form or another. In fact, it's even a board game. It is a fairly lightweight, but also extremely brutal and cutthroat economy game. You play as these little weird aliens on this planet. And when I say weird, I mean weird. One of them looks like, and there is no other way to say this, Patrick, one of them looks like a shaved scrotum.
Yay!
Walking around, little nutsack on this planet. And what's this little nutsack doing? He is trying to mine resources. So what you're going to do in this game is you're going to claim land, and then with that land, you're going to mine it using these big machines called mules. They're basically just like donkeys or something, but they're robots. Extract resources, you sell them for food. Food allows you to do even bigger moves that give you bigger resources, that give you more money. Throughout the game, there's going to be random events that can screw you over or screw your opponents over. But you were talking about table talk. One of the cool things about this is you can buy and sell and wheel and deal with other players when it's most advantageous for you. Hey, I'll trade you this, or hey, I'll sell you this. It looks like you need it, but you sell it to them at a premium, and they give you more money of theirs, which means you have more money, they have less, and that's how the game goes. Whoever has the most money at the end is the winner. What I didn't like about it, the event cards. They are brutal. Now, to be fair, the only game we played of this, the event cards pummeled me and only me. Nobody else suffered from those things except me. And it led to an absolute thrashing that Jessica took full advantage of, obviously. But since you need 3 players, what Jessica and I will do is we'll set up kind of like a dummy AI player.
Sure.
And even that motherfucker kicked my ass. And so I was like, this was just not fun. It was all around just a bad time. The game doesn't take too long to play, but when you're learning how to play something for the first time and then you're also getting your ass handed to you, I mean, look, to be fair, you just have to learn how to play better. And that's why I think the game deserves another shot. I liked everything about it. I liked the look of it. I liked the vibe. I liked the color scheme. I like what you're doing. I like that it's an economy game that doesn't feel like a big slog of an economy game. It's very light. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. Yet it gives you all this strategic depth that you can play with simply by using your own skills, wheeling and dealing and timing everything out.
You know what, Bryce, when you say talk above the table and where you have a chance to like persuade other people to make these purchases from you and whatnot, and you get to sell at a premium, that sounds like a game that's right up my alley. And while a random event screwing someone, while that can usually be a big deterrent for a game, I like that. I think sometimes that's what makes for a memorable moment. Yeah, it can make for some butt hurt moments whenever we're the ones that are on the receiving end of it. But, oh man, that sounds like one I would actually really enjoy.
It is a lot of fun if you're not the one getting screwed over completely every card, every round.
You'll never forget that play, though. You'll never forget that.
That's a great point. No, you won't. You won't. And I think I want more memories like that, which is why I want to give Mule a second chance, and eventually one of these days we will.
Game number 2.
Next one I put on is River Valley Glassworks. Now, this is brand new. How can this be in my second chances? I'll tell you how. My first playthrough of this, you could play it on Board Game Arena prior to on the table. It hadn't even come out yet. So anybody that was showing how to play it and whatnot, they had a prototype. You couldn't get the game yet. And I was like, oh, this is so relevant. Let's play this on Board Game Arena. Read over the rules. They're relatively simple. However, I got a rule somewhat wrong. So you're collecting glass. They have these glass pieces, and they have this river going across the board, we'll say, and there's like 7 spaces. The glasses each have their own unique shape. And you can take one of your pieces, we'll say you have a square shape, you put it on this square section of river, and you can collect the glass pieces that are either to the left or to the right of that square, and then the river moves. Things will move down the river to the lake at the very end. There's mechanisms as to why. But as you collect glass, you may put it onto your player board. Ideally, you want rare things in the front, and you want common things to be what you have at the very end because they're easier to come by. Well, why would I want to do that? Because those go up higher as you fill them up more. It didn't click for me because I had that one rule wrong. And I put this one on the list as thinking, you know what, I know I'm going to play it again. And it's one that I had a bad playthrough the first time, but I'm going to reread those rules and I'm going to get it right. And at some point, I'm going to play it again. Since then, I've been invited. I have 2 asynchronous games going right now. And so far, it's redeeming itself quite well.
I have never even heard of that one. It sounds interesting enough, though.
It's really new. And it's going to be a heck of a seller because of the artwork and because of the pieces. But there's a nice little game underneath it. River Valley Glassworks, that is.
Next game on my list is a little game called Homebrewers. This is a game all about drafting dice and then building little engines, kind of a hybrid of those two. And you're going to be playing as an uber hipster aging millennial with skinny jeans and scarf and everything. And you're an amateur beer maker, and you're going to be making this in your house, and then you're going to be taking it to competitions and hopefully winning the big prize. In this game, you're going to roll dice, you're going to select actions based off of those dice, then you're going to draft ingredient cards, and then finally brew beer. Depending on the type of beer you brew will depend on what track your little beer glass, it is a beer glass, that's actually pretty cool, moves up. So if I make an IPA, I'm going to move up a certain number of spaces on the IPA track. Same thing for the ambers and so forth. The cool thing about this is once you reach a certain point on the track, you're going to unlock bonus turns that allow you to do more beer making, or maybe you have to clean out all your equipment before you can make new beer. Essentially, you're going to try to brew the right type of beer that will impress the judges, which means you need to draft the right ingredient cards. But the ingredient cards also give you extra bonuses every time you brew beer using those ingredients. You got competitions that are held throughout the entirety of the game, and whoever brewed the most beer and brewed the beer to the judges' liking and all of that, they're going to be the winner. I should love this game because I love beer. Not only that, I like brewing beer. I've only done it once, but it was really fun, and I love the chemistry of beer, the whole thing, the making of it, when to drop the hops in. I love all that shit. However, the game just felt so restrictive. You often find yourself needing to do 6 things in your turn, but you only have 3 dice, so you only have 3 moves. The ingredients cards are probably the worst example of this, so it takes a turn to draft an ingredient card, just to have it. And then it takes another turn to either use it or put it into one of your beer recipes. That's 2/3 of your turns right there. Now, I get you're supposed to unlock turns with the little engines you build, not only in your beer, but also by moving up the beer track. So this is definitely a code I have not cracked yet. You should see Jessica play this thing. She's like, made this beer, unlock this, do this, move up this track. Now this gives me this beer. Now I've unlocked that. Now I've made this beer. And I'm like, holy shit, dude.
She's got that chainy action thing going on.
Yeah, no, she's a fucking maverick. And I'm more kind of like the dunce cap wearer of this relationship when it comes to board games. Not that I need to win every time we play. It's not that. I just like to be competitive and at least feel like I've done a good job. And this game, I haven't done it yet, but I want to give it another shot because I want to like this game. Like I said, I like beer. I think once I figure out how to make that rhythm go, I will enjoy it.
I like the theme of the game. I like the idea of creating beer. I like the pieces, the little like cups that they have going on. But I'm looking at pictures as you're explaining it to me, and this has one of the things that I would call as a trap sometimes when I'm shopping for a game, and it's when it almost looks like they put a lot of time and energy into the marketing of the game. We got to make sure that we have the pieces looking like beer glasses, and we've got to make the chart look like it's a chalkboard, like you would see on the wall at the brew. Add these colors. Make sure that you have hipsters in it, and make sure we have a diverse cast. Like everything, like they covered all their bases to make sure that they could sell as many copies as possible. Which I don't blame them for that. Don't get me wrong. That's what you're supposed to do when you're publishing a game. But it almost looks like they spent an awful lot of time on the graphic design and the marketability side. And it sounds like the fun part of the game when you finally, like when you get to do the thing that creates the thing, that's what gives you those dopamine hits and makes you feel like you're being rewarded in your play. And it sounds like it's a slog to get like they're drip fed as opposed to like, oh yeah, like not quite as satisfying as you'd want it to be. It sounds like that was your experience with it.
That is actually a really, really good way to say it. You said it better than I could. It is. It's a slow drip as if you're doing distillation with like a liquor, whereas we're trying to make beer. This is a big vat of beer, but you're slow dripping it to me like liquor. That's my problem with it. But again, I think if I can unlock the way the engine works, I'll have a good time with it. Time will tell. But in the meantime, Homebrewers is on my list for games I think need another shot.
Game number 3.
All right, for number 3, I'm going to pick one that I actively did not, well, I don't want to say that I actively didn't like it. It was one that didn't wow me. It's one that a couple years ago, it had all the hype. One of my buddies had it, so he came to the local shop and we all sat down and we played Cascadia. Cascadia is a game whereby you're taking tiles and you're putting them in your little nature reserve area and you're trying to meet the objectives that were dealt at the start of the game. You've got these 4 different objective cards. You want to have your eagles in a line and you want to have fish surrounded by, etc., etc. And it did nothing for me. We finished the game, and I was like, that was it? This isn't even as good as Carcassonne. Why is this the hotness? Why? Sometimes I think that I'm one of those folks that I'm a victim of letting the hype for a game or the excitement for a game, like I build it up in my brain like this is going to be an experience like nothing I've ever had before on a tabletop. Cascadia just didn't do anything for me. It's a fine game. That's the extent of it. You never had that wow moment. You never had a tense moment. You never really interacted with other players aside from when you're drafting. Oh, you took the thing I wanted, darn you. Well, that's okay. I still have 5 options. But here we are, a couple years later. I haven't played it since, and it keeps on climbing. You know, everybody loves this game. So maybe if I come into it now, recalibrated with the expectation that I'm not going to like it, it'll level out somewhere in the middle and I can go, okay, that was fun.
So I actually do enjoy this game. I did not know, though, that it got a lot of hype. I thought it was just one of those games that was good for people who don't play games too much or people who aren't serious hardcore gamers.
And it is.
This is something you can bring to the table and get people who grew up playing Monopoly or something to be like, oh yeah, I like that. Never buy into the hype, man. That's the lesson there. I didn't realize that game had such hype to it. But your points are valid, though. There's not much to the game. I think this is a good example of people getting caught up in that hype that you find so often in this hobby, where everyone's talking about the game. Everyone's saying it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And so now everybody is jumping on that bandwagon. And we don't really talk about that a lot on this show because we try to keep it very focused to just what we are doing. But we also try to avoid that bandwagon as much as possible. And I think knowing what you just shared about Cascadia now, it's a good example of what happened.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm like a 5-year-old at heart. So I am very easy. I easily get myself excited for something, perhaps more excited than I should. You tell me I'm going to have a glass of water at 3:00. I start getting all hyped up and then I drink it and I'm like, oh man, there's just water. Anyhow, a couple years later, as I mentioned, I want to give this one another shot. I think if I come into it with a different mindset, all that hype's gone now, and I could just play the game for what it is, something tells me I'm going to appreciate it. That's Cascadia.
Number 3 on my list is a game called Deep Vents. We're sticking with the animal kingdom here, except we're going way, way under the ocean. This is essentially a tile drafting, kind of engine building, but more like a chain reaction building battle royale in which you're looking to be the last ecosystem standing by killing off all your opponents. So essentially, you're going to draft tiles, and each tile has a deep sea creature on it, and you're going to line them up into your little ecosystem. What's cool about this is each creature has a different ability or effect that is going to affect all the other tiles you put around it. So some will give you defense if you have this animal next to it, some will increase this animal's attack, and so forth. Once you lay down your tile, you're going to start from the top of your ecosystem going to the bottom, left to right, kind of like if you were reading a book, and you're going to set that chain reaction off off. It's going to give you resources. It might give you some defense, but mostly this chain reaction is designed to attack your opponents. So the idea is to lay things down in a way where everyone benefits everyone else the most. What I did not like about this game was the iconography. It's insane. There are so many different pieces of iconography that you have to learn. Every single tile has like 7 or 8 different pictures on it. And you're like, okay, maybe there's a player guide. No, everyone's just passing the same fucking rule book around and going, okay, well, wait, I want to draft this one, but wait, what's that symbol mean again? And wait, let me see the book real quick. Like, oh wait, how does this? And so you take all this time trying to learn it, and you're trying to learn the game on top of that too. And then you put a tile in the wrong spot and you don't realize it till it's your next turn. It's too late to move it. It just kind of takes you out of what's supposed to be this cool chain reaction battle royale. Like, I laid this down and set this off and you got hit for 6. And then, oh, you came back at me and hit me for 8 because your chain reaction was cool. It takes you right out of that. Why I feel it deserves another shot? This game, the concept of it, the theme of it, it's all really, really fucking awesome. Like deep sea creatures feeding off of each other to hurt your opponent. That is cool. Once all the icons are learned, I'm sure I will like it, but for now, I just don't.
It sounds like the kind of game that you would get really good at as you see more and more of the tiles. Like, I like the concept whereby you're building out these combos and chain reactions, and you're going to discover new things as you play more, and you're going to be able to find this combo of tiles. Oh, if I put this one here, this one in the middle, and this one after it, man, that's going to be a brutal attack every time I get to run my engine. I love when a game can give you these satisfying turns that are built up by something that you've done. That said, you know what? I wouldn't let the game off the hook for that iconography. It's a game's job to have the iconography, have the graphic design work out so that you're not having to dissect the mechanisms of the game. And suddenly you're not a gamer. You're just trying to translate a language, and no one signs up because, yeah, you bought this game because you want to be sea critters battling out, not because you want to start like mathematically determining which tile should go where based on the symbol that you just read does XYZ going next to the one that does WQR, etc. Yeah, that sounds, you know what? Bad iconography or too much iconography, even good iconography, but too much of it. Once you can't play the game and you're instead making sure that you're playing it correctly, man, that just kills the game.
It sure does, and it sure did for us. However, again, that chain reaction battle royale and the artwork too is amazing. You can tell this is a game that wants you immersed in it, and I want to be immersed in it. Hopefully, once we learn the iconography, that will happen. But until then, Deep Vents remains number 3 on my list of games I think deserve another shot.
Game number 4.
All right, I'm going to go with one that we'll say this one I liked. This is a game that I thoroughly enjoy, but it's one that I don't feel the need, I didn't feel the need to get back to it because it's too similar to its predecessors. And this game is Clank Catacombs. Now, Bryce, have you played Clank?
I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, if you play Clank, then you've played Clank Catacombs too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Clank is a phenomenal game, as is Clank Catacombs. This really is a good one. The idea behind Clank is that I'll work off the original. You're going into a dungeon, right? It's a deck building game. You have the same 10 cards to start your game as anybody else does. There's a market of cards through which you can purchase new ones that might let you move through the dungeon faster or fight off monsters in the dungeon faster, or maybe give you a better economic power in your deck to be able to buy even better cards or points. The idea is that as you go down deeper and deeper, you're making clank, a noise. That's a sign, you clank. You made a noise in the dungeon. Well, there's a dragon down there. Think Smaug, think the Hobbit. And he heard that clank, and he gets angry, and he knows someone's coming after his treasure. The goal is get one of those treasures and get out. Now, one of the, we'll say, criticisms of the base game Clank is that the treasures are always going to be in the same spot. So Clank Catacombs comes out, and what it does is it introduces a modular board. So the board is going to be different every time. And they make it balanced. They make it work. There's little portals and whatnot, so nobody's going to be stuck off in La La Land with no chance to get out. It was very well done. It's a phenomenal game. However, I haven't gotten back to it a year and a half later because it's basically Clank. It's so similar to the base game that I didn't feel the need to buy it, and I just haven't had the opportunity to play it again. And I've played base Clank a billion times, so if I'm going to play a game on game day with the guys, we're going to learn something new, or we're going to play something that we want to get on the show for review. I don't want to play Clank again. Well, what about Clank Catacombs? Well, I just said I don't want to play Clank again. You know what I mean? It's too similar. Sometimes the game's just too similar and we don't give it a second chance. But it has been long enough, and they've got an expansion out for it now. I think it deserves a second chance from me. I know I would like it. I know that I enjoy this game, but I think it's worth my time again because it's been so long. It is a collection of mechanisms that I enjoy, and I think incorporating that expansion is going to make it fresh for me.
You know, the thing about Clank for me and why I've never given it a shot is that when I got into the hobby, this was already a well-established game with a bunch of different cards and variations and things. It just seemed like an overwhelming project to take on, and I just avoided it. But I've also never heard what the game was about before talking to you tonight. It sounds like it'd be fun enough. I like deck builders, and this seems pretty cool.
It's wonderful. It's one of the only ones that my wife will play with me.
Well, there you see, that makes it a winner right there.
That's right.
All right, next up, number 4 for me is a game called The Daedalus Sentence. If you've ever seen it, you're going to remember it. This thing makes quite the presence on the table. This is a co-op where you have to escape a floating alien prison orbiting around, one of the moons on Jupiter, Ganymede or something like that. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's standard co-op fare for the most part. Every player has their own abilities, and you take a turn, and then the game takes a turn to really screw you over the way most good co-ops do. Mm-hmm. The standout feature here, like I said, the table presence. This game is fucking massive. It is a giant circular board made of many different levels, and the levels turn within each other, so you can spin the levels around, and that's the big feature of the game. As you move throughout the ship, you're going to be unlocking doors, getting these levels to twist to where you need them to be, and then the aliens are going to twist them back. You can be on one side of the ship 1 second, and then before you know it, you're all the way on the other side because the level shifted. So you want to escape that maze, shift it to where you need it to go, and then if you can make it, the escape pod or whatever it is, I don't know, we've never gotten to the end, you win the game. What I did not like about this one was the movement itself. The actual movement of your characters was very, very, very stiff. It is very hard to get around this board, and there isn't any kind of creative way that you bypass that. It's just the rule is one action, one space. In some games that can work, but in a game where the board is constantly shifting, I was hoping you would be able to move around a little faster. The enemies move way faster than that. I do remember that about this game. What happened was we spent 2 hours, and that's a long time for me and Jessica, 2 hours slogging through this game, just knowing failure's coming. And you see it, and you don't want to give up because you're like, well, we have it set up, and we should at least see it to the end. And no, fucked. You lose. That's it. And again, don't need to win every time you play, but it just felt like we had handcuffs on our ankles, we just couldn't get to where we wanted to go. That and the artwork is really strange. It's kind of got that hyper realism kind of computer artwork from 2005 thing going on. Patrick, have you ever seen that YouTube video called Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life?
I'm going to watch it now. Yeah, I've never seen this.
Day up with this. It's really, really creepy, but it gives that kind of artwork. It gives that vibe. So every time I look at the box in our game room, all I hear is the narrator of the Shrek is Love video. You'll understand. I don't want to spoil it for you. You'll understand when you watch it.
All right.
Why I want to give this game another shot, creepy artwork aside, the concept of the rotating board, very unique for a co-op. I know not everyone likes co-ops. I like co-ops, or at least I like co-ops with Jessica. I don't know how I do with other people. And there's a lot of different ways to experience the game. There's not just different difficulty levels. You can add 1 or 2 little things into each game to adjust the difficulty to what you want it to be. I think that's awesome. And it can even be played as a one versus many, where one person takes on the aliens and everyone else is trying to escape. That's really cool. I think there's a lot of variety here. I think if we house ruled the movement to where you move 2 spaces instead of 1 or whatever, it might help it out. Also, I need to look past the artwork, but I think I can. We just need to find some time to do it.
Maybe that's your answer, is adjusting that difficulty. It sounds like that one play, you didn't have a shot from the get-go. Maybe adjust it so slightly.
Setting. We played it on the easiest setting.
Oh, geez. Hence the perhaps need to have. So I got to say, the production looks fantastic. This is the one that comes in like a pizza box. His box is like 15 by 15 or something absurd, isn't it?
Yeah, like an extra large pizza box. We actually have to put it on the top shelf, like off in the corner. Like there's no room on a regular shelf for it.
I bought a collection from a guy out here in southwestern PA some time ago, and this was in it. And I'll buy collections to resell games, and it helps us to pay for the hosting fees and whatnot for the podcast. And I still haven't sold this. My deal is I'll put up a list, and every time I put up a new list, things that are on it again, I'll knock like 10% off. So I started this one at like 50, and then to 45, and then to 41 or whatever. This thing's down to like $20 at this point. I'm like, I can't believe nobody's bought this. It's got these awesome miniatures, this 3D board, and you know what? I'm at a point now where I'm just going to play it.
Well, yeah, maybe the artwork freaks people out. I don't know, because the concept of it is cool. When you watch that Shrek video, you're going to know what I'm talking about, and then you're never going to be able to unsee it.
I know what I'm doing tomorrow.
Yeah, just don't let your kids be around when you watch it. That's all I'm going to say.
That creepy, huh?
It's bad, man. It's bad. Well, this show's not for kids, so if any of your kids are listening right now, that is a you problem.
Game number 5.
All right, Bryce, I'm going to reach a little bit for number 5. My number 5 is a game. This is similar to Voidfall in that it was set up for success, and I'm glad to say that it was successful. This is not a game that I dislike. This is a game that I thoroughly enjoyed, and this game is called Revive. Revive came out about a year ago now. I played it at Origins. Teacher Ryan, as he's called, because he's the one on the show that'll teach us all the games that we don't have time or the energy to learn. I really wanted to learn Revive. I kept hearing all these great things about this Euro. We set it up in the open gaming area. He brought it. He set it up. He taught it. He played it. It was wonderful. Really enjoyed this game. And Bryce, I'll tell you what, you tasked me with give a quick synopsis of the game, and I don't remember it well enough to do so in a proficient manner. I don't want to sell your listeners short. Revive's your classic Euro. All right, you're going around and you're uncovering these areas that are encased in ice, and you're finding little artifacts and whatnot throughout it. The primary, we'll say that the hook of the game is that you're playing cards to this basically a tableau, 2 to the bottom, 2 to the top, as I recall. And you get to run, like when you play the second, you get to do the first, something along those lines. I truly don't remember this game well enough to describe it, and that's why it deserves a second chance. It's one of those very few games that I loved my play of, and for whatever reason, haven't gotten back to it. There wasn't any part of it that I didn't enjoy, or found boring, or tedious, or was a slog, or too difficult, and yet I still haven't gotten back to it. It absolutely deserves it. It's just finding the game, finding the time to relearn it, get it set up, get it on the table, teach it to a group. That's a lot. It's a hurdle that I'm having trouble overcoming.
Well, when you do a podcast about board games and you have a family and a day job and all that, you're constantly playing stuff with the family, or you're constantly playing the next thing so you can talk about it on the show. And it's hard to find time to squeeze everything in, and maybe that's just what it is for you.
You know what? It's funny you put it that way, because we actually joke sometimes about how we don't get to play what we want to play. We play what we have to play. And That's not necessarily true. You know, we have new games coming in, and sometimes a publisher will send us a game and, okay, well, that one we have to play. They provided it for us. So let's make it a point to thank them, get it on the show, and share our honest thoughts, good or bad. So that does happen sometimes. Usually the have to play is, oh, we need something to fill in for next episode. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about stuff that we've talked about in the past. We want to stay fresh and relevant. Revive's already been on the show. So to give the amount of time and energy it would take to set it up, relearn it, replay it, reteach it, etc., to talk about a game that we've already talked about, well, that's a big ask, you know, when we've got to fill in another hour and a half with several new games. But man, it's one, I have this dream of like someday when we're done doing a podcast, and I kept a small collection of 30 games, and those are the ones that I truly loved. I could see Revive being one of them. And I think that's why it deserves a second chance.
Okay. My number 5 is actually a game that I've played more than once. This is the one that stands out here in that regard, and that is Cape May.
Oh,
This
okay.
is a light city builder with some area control aspects, and it takes place during America's progressive era, that weird period of time after the Victorian but before the modern era. So right there around 1910. And it's a piece of history in America that I'm just fascinated with. I don't know why, but that's for another show, another time. I've played this game a few times. It just hasn't grabbed me yet, but I want it to. Essentially, you walk around Cape May, which is a real place in South Jersey, and you're buying plots of land, and you're going to build cottages and storefronts on this land that you buy. As the game progresses and you walk around your properties, you walk around town, you're going to generate revenue from them, and then you're going to invest that revenue into those properties so you can turn cottages into mansions and then eventually historical landmarks, and you can turn your storefronts into large shops that generate more money for you so you can better invest, etc., etc. You're going to gain points based on where these buildings are located. The game is broken up into 4 different quadrants on the board, sand, gravel, dirt, something like that. And you're going to get points for having the most in there, the fewest in there, whatever the game requires. And then you even get points for walking around and collecting bird tokens, which is a really, really cool piece of history they snuck in there. And then the player who built the best town or piece of town is going to be the winner. What I don't like about this game, I mean, it's really hard to say. There's so many things I should like about it, so many things I do like about it. But when you put it all together, something about it just feels so underwhelming. Now, it could come from the fact that I absolutely suck at this game, but that should not be enough to get you to dislike it. I don't know, something about it, and I haven't figured it out yet. I'm hoping for that aha moment, and that's why I keep coming back to this one. I just don't know when it's going to happen or what it's going to be.
This one's interesting. We reviewed this back in, I think we had it on the Level Up podcast in like episode 39 or 40, somewhere around there. It was relatively early. And
go back and listen to it, folks.
There you go. That was a shameless plug. It's a very safe game. And what I mean by that is none of the mechanisms are going to strike you as new, and the sum of their parts aren't going to do something incredible. There's no portion of the game that's going to blow your mind or really like wow you. You're never going to have that turn that feels like, wow, I just did that amazing thing that I've been building up to for 7 turns in a row. Everything's relatively safe. It's a game that works, be it not the most exciting game. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you have cards instead of dice for movement. That's safe. That's a better way to do it. You have some interesting decisions. Am I going to branch off this path or that path? This path is one way, and I can build a little shop there. And then maybe when I make a loop around, I can turn it into a large Victorian home or whatever. On my way, I can collect a bird token or 2. It's like a collection of mechanisms that work together in a safe way. It's not going to be in anybody's top 10 ever. But you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's like, oh yeah, I hate that game. It sucks.
Well, right now, I'm that person. You found him.
Yeah, but you keep losing at it. You said you're no good at it.
That's true. But no, I think maybe what I was hoping for is that the game would ebb and flow in a way where you can be a little more immersed in the theme, and maybe that's just too much to expect out of that type of Euro. Because
Perhaps.
I really like the theme, and maybe that's what it is, but I'm not ready to part ways with it yet. It will hit my table again. I will yell expletives, I'm sure. That is number 5, Cape May.
Game number 6.
All right, Bryce, for my number 6, I put one that I was extremely excited for whenever it came out. Some people hate the idea of an app being used in a game. I don't mind it. In fact, I actively enjoy it. I love me some Lord of the Rings, and when I saw Journeys in Middle-earth coming out, I thought, man, this is going to be so awesome. It's a dungeon crawl, basically, whereby you have a character and you're going to be upgrading, you're going to be getting better as you go through. You'll encounter monsters and you're rolling dice to beat those monsters and whatnot. And a lot of it's tracked via the app. After each of the player characters have had a turn and the monsters have done their turn, you'll click, okay, we're all done with our turns in the app. And then it'll give you some kind of, not necessarily a narrative, but what it's doing is it's giving you a game timer. So the first time you say, okay, the turn's over, it's like the ash in the air is irritating the eyes. All players take a damage. And then if you keep going and you're, 3 turns later, it finds a way to say everybody takes 2 damage. And then further on, it says, if you don't win within a turn, all is lost and you'll have lost this scenario. So basically the app is along with supplementing your play. It's also acting as a timer. I'm telling you what, I played like 2 scenarios and I sold the game. I haven't gotten back to it since. And what frustrated me about it was I want to explore. I want to see what the app has to offer. I want to see what cards I can uncover. And I'm running through, I'm butchering these Urukai, and there's a treasure chest over in that corner. And I can't go get it because it's going to take me the rest of this day to go to that end of the tile and then come back to this end, back into the forest and continue along with the story that my objective that I need to complete. I'm in a time crunch here. And I was like, man, that is not fun. That's the fun thing. I want to go get the thing. I want to see what it has. I want to peek into that, behind that door. And I want to toss the pebble into that well and stir the waters and see what happens. But the game's not letting me. So I haven't gotten back to it. And you know what? I've only done 2 scenarios of it. I feel like maybe I cut it a little bit short. It is a well-loved game. So perhaps getting back into scenario 3, 4, 5, maybe they ease up a little bit on that time crunch. Maybe they don't put the good things that you want to do on the other end of the map for a change. Perhaps I was just playing it wrong. Maybe I should have split someone off the party and sent my hobbit off in that direction and let my warriors go slaughter the baddies. For that reason, I think Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth is one that I really owe it a second chance.
I'm looking at some pictures of it right now, though, and this looks like complete fan service, not to just people who like dungeon crawlers, but people who like Lord of the Rings. I'm not a fan of either personally, but, you know, looking at it, I can see the appeal. The app-driven thing is also something like, I don't know if you heard that episode we did recently.
I heard your episode on technology and playing board games online and on using like online platforms. Do you have an episode did you incorporate into that one?
I think we talked about apps like briefly.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just not my thing. But like looking at the game, I can see where people would dig it. Like if I didn't know there was a timer, it looks like it wants you to explore.
I mean, it's called Journeys in Middle-earth, not Race Through Middle-earth. I felt like I was racing through it as opposed to journeying and getting to uncover the lore. It absolutely is fan service in a good way. I like Lord of the Rings. I want to learn about these things that were only briefly mentioned in the books or in the movies. I want the game to tell me more about those areas and come up with some new ideas. I wanted it to be super thematic. And while it was thematic, I couldn't really indulge in it as much as I wanted to. So that's one that I want to give a second chance to. If I come across maybe a used copy or something, or if a buddy wants to break it out one day and say, hey, let's play some Journeys in Middle-earth, I'm absolutely looking to give it a second chance.
All right. My number 6 game is Rallyman GT. Not Rallyman Dirt, which was a better game, at least so far in my experience. Rallyman GT, it's a roll and move, push your luck racing game. Essentially, you roll a series of dice and you're going to increase or decrease your speed around the track. The number of dice you use on any given turn determines how much you're going to push your luck, because on these dice, yes, there are things that make you go faster, slower, whatever you need to do, but there's also these warning signs, and if you roll too many of them, you spin out. Typical racing game, the first to cross the finish line is the winner. I like racing games. I like pushing your luck. I like chucking dice. Everything about this game I should love. However, I found that the spin-outs, that basically ends the game for you. And it's just really hard, if not impossible, to catch up. And so you're just kind of waiting for the game to be over at that point. Now, this could just be a 2-player issue. Maybe with more players, you're getting in each other's way more. You're not pushing your luck as much because there's a lot more to lose. If you spin out, you'll get 3-4 cars behind, whatever. But as of right now, it just didn't work for us for that reason. But like I said, I like racing games. This game appeals to me more than a game like Heat. I like the dice more than the cards that you see in the game Heat. I think the dice make it more action-packed. It feels like there's more on the line and that you're at the edge of your seat waiting to see what happens next, much like if you were at a race. And I like the customization of the racetracks. For now, it didn't do it for me. At least I have Rallyman Dirt. That one I like better because it does time instead of first across the finish line. But, we'll see what happens.
I never got into either Rallyman GT or Dirt. I know Dirt had some issues with that. That company went under, if I'm not mistaken, during fulfillment. And there were a lot of folks that couldn't get a hold of their copy of Rallyman Dirt.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you know what? Now, I'm no pro with the behind-the-scenes stuff, but I understand, if I'm not mistaken, that was a game whereby there were a lot of folks that they backed it on Kickstarter. They paid for the shipping and whatnot. And they got the email, sorry, just don't have the funds. And it was like, what? I paid you for shipping. And like they sold off copy. Maybe someone came in and rescued, like swooped in, saved the day. And
they must have,
bought them
because
up.
I didn't back it. I forget where I bought it, but yeah, we didn't back it or anything. I think somebody did come save it.
It's one for listeners. If you got some time this afternoon, do some research and maybe hit us up. Let us know the story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But until then, hopefully not too many people got screwed over. Rallyman is going to sit on my list of games that need another shot until I give it one. Hopefully I like it. We'll see.
Game number 7.
All right, Bryce, we're moving on to number 7. And my number 7, you know what? I have a bad habit with conventions. I keep bringing up games that I played at Origins. This one comes from Gen Con like a year and a half ago. What is it? 2 years ago now we played this one. We're noticing a trend. I'm playing these hot games and they let me down. This one let me down for a different reason. This is a game called Sleeping Gods. Much like Deep Vents earlier, this is a Ryan Lockett game. Sleeping Gods is supposed to be like a storytelling, open-world adventure game. Now, this one does not have an app. It's all told through cards and whatnot. It looked like the kind of game that Scott and I would absolutely love. So we signed up together. We were like, you know what? We're going to make it a point. We're not going to leave Gen Con until we know how to play that game. Do you go to conventions?
I do not.
Okay. Go to conventions, and here's why. If you have a list of like 10 games that you want to learn, you know how like you got to sit there with a rule book for 2 hours and like make sure you know it, and then you set up the game and you're tinkering in the basement all alone like a neck-bearded alchemist trying to figure out how to play this thing so that you can teach somebody. That's the worst part of being a big fan of the hobby. You go to a convention and you sign up for these events and you're like, okay, I'm going to sit here for a learn to play, and I'm going to sit at this one at 3 hours later for a learn to play, and I'm going to do these learn to play games, and I'm going to come home and I'm going to know how to play all these stuff, and it's so great. We signed up to play Sleeping Gods, and it was a learn to play. So presumably, like any other learn to play, you sit down and someone teaches you how to play the game and they hold your hand through it and whatnot. And dude came over to Scott and I. The other 2 people didn't show up. He's like, well, I can go ahead and teach you. We can just go with 2. We're like, yeah, absolutely. We want to learn it. He cracks open the rule book and he starts on paragraph 1. And we're like, oh my God, we spent all kinds of money and gas and hotels to get to Gen Con to have someone read us the rules and try. Nope. So we cut it short. We sat for like 15 minutes. Oh, wait, I'm getting a phone call. Like we made something. We totally made something up, but we just abandoned the game like mid-learning. And I haven't, it tainted my experience with the game so bad that like I see the box, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. It might be my favorite game of all time. And I still don't know it because I haven't been able to go back to it ever since that attempted teach. And that is why I want to give a second chance to Sleeping Gods.
2 thoughts I immediately had. Number 1, the neckbeard is the worst part of this hobby. not the rules, no, the neckbeard. Right there next to the BO. That's number 1. Number 2, this is a perfect example of what a really bad teaching episode can do for a game, for even the most experienced of game players.
You're not kidding. If a game's not, like if you're expecting to be taught a game and it's not done well, it just ruins the entire experience for you, and it did for me there.
Well, that's unfortunate, because then also what you give is somebody just, they're itching to say it, and then the dreaded, actually, let me just see the rule book comes out.
Oh, yeah.
Here we fucking go. Here we
No,
go.
you can't see the rule book. I'm teaching it. But maybe that can be remedied with a second chance for Sleeping Gods.
All right, next game on my list. I think we're at number 7 now. This is Godzilla Tokyo Clash. This is another battle royale, just like Deep Vents, but this one's a lot more beat 'em up, rock 'em, sock 'em. Kind of reminds me of the game Rampage back in the day, the arcade. Have you ever played that?
Oh, yeah.
So this game is one of the better looking games I have as far as the minis go. These are some of the best minis I've ever seen just right out of the box. You play as Godzilla or Mothra, or you play as some of the kaiju, whoever they are. You play as kaiju, and you're going to move about the city destroying buildings for energy, and then you're going to throw the buildings at your opponents, and you're going to punch them and throw them across town, and the city's going to try to defend itself, and it's just a big beat 'em up. It's supposed to be really fun. The damage is really interesting in this game. You're going to go through your deck of cards, and the cards are going to represent attacks you can do and things like that. They also calculate damage. So if I were to play a card that does 6 damage to my opponent, let's say, it's a big hit. My opponent's then going to draw 6 cards from the top of their deck. Out of that hand, I get to pick one that's worth the most points, and then that's going to be the damage they take, and then everything else gets discarded. So they kind of lose their ability to use cards when you hit them, but then the damage they take is kind of random too. It's fun, or it's supposed to be fun, but we didn't like it, and I think the reason we didn't like it was we took the game too seriously. We didn't know. We didn't know that it was supposed to be essentially a fuck-around game. You're supposed to have fun playing as the kaiju and throwing things at each other more than you're actually supposed to try to play strategically and win. And so I think we were getting really frustrated at the fact of like, I just spent all this time building up this big attack. I drew all these cards out of your deck and they were all zeros. Meanwhile, you responded with a quick little 1-2 punch, drew 2 cards from my deck, and they were a 3.
You got my finishing moves. Yep.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, that sucks. And so we shelved it. It's just been sitting there. And I had an epiphany recently about a game like that. Like, dude, you're just supposed to just screw around with this. You're not supposed to think about it too hard. So that's why I think it deserves another chance. It's just supposed to be a random, chaotic brawl. And viewed from that perspective, I think it can be rather enjoyable.
Yeah, go beer and pretzels. You take that situation whereby you do this big mega attack and man, you didn't get anything. You gotta like envision where you use that lightning breath and you just nicked their shoulder. Like that's just how it happened for you. And you gotta kind of laugh at yourself. This strikes me as a game. Now, I haven't played it. Scott's got this one and he says it's a lot like Unmatched. And he also says it's much, much better. If you played this, just you and Jessica, play it with 4. I'm gathering that this is the type of game that gets way better when you have a third and a fourth variable incorporated into your board. So it's not like a back and forth. My net positives are your net negatives and vice versa. But whenever you incorporate a third and a fourth player, I feel like, oh man, you get 2 people teaming up on one, then the other guy's left alone. So everybody's like, wait, we got to get him. So all 3 monsters turn towards that one. I can see where that would make it a really fun beer and pretzels romp.
That is exactly the plan for the next time we play. We're going to take on 2 characters apiece. It's a great looking game. The premise is amazing. You just can't take it that seriously. And we won't next time. But until then, Godzilla remains on the list of games I think deserve a second shot.
Game number 8.
Well, let's get to number 8. For me, it's going to be Gaia Project. Gaia Project's we'll say the successor to Terra Mystica. This was a lengthy game, and it was right up my alley. It's the kind of Euro that I like, whereby you have to think a few turns ahead. Terra Mystica and Gaia Project both are games where you have a map that you need to manipulate the territories on the map so that they will cater to your species, your race, your faction, your type. And then you can start building on that land, and then you can upgrade your buildings, and it expands your tableau so that your income's higher. It's everything that you want in a Euro, but it was another one of those very complicated rule sets. Had that learning game. You ever play a game whereby the goal is not to win or lose? The goal is to, by the end of the game, understand how to play. That's what happened. And typically whenever I play a game like that, the objective is, okay, I need to play this again tomorrow, and then I need to teach it just to get those rules cemented in there so that if I don't play it again for a few months, I'm good. I'm cool. I know how to do it. That never happened. So I've never gotten back to it. And we were talking about setting up games in the basement and things that like they'll sit there for 3 days because you got a family and you've got a day job and you still got to learn that one. Well, there's a third in this Terra Mystica series called Age of Innovation that came out recently. And it has been in the setup and ready to start playing mode for like 4 nights now. And I just haven't had an evening where I can be like, okay, I'm going to try and take a turn and see what happens. So in a weird way, the second chance that I'm going to give to Gaia Project is going to be in the form of its new sibling, Age of Innovation.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of it. This definitely seems like a game you need to learn the first go around, and you need to enjoy the process of learning.
I loved the intro game, the learning game that I had of Gaia Project, so I'm very excited to give it a second chance, be it in the form of Age of Innovation. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to hit all the right notes.
All right, number 8 on my list of games that need another chance, Dog Park. This was a game that I almost backed on Kickstarter, didn't, and then bought it later because my wife is a sucker for dogs. She loves dogs, and so I figured, Merry Christmas, babe, Dog Park. This is a fairly light bidding and set collection Euro about taking your dogs for a walk. You bid on dogs at the start of a round, and you draft them into your kennel if you win them. And then your points that you get from the dogs throughout the game are also your currency you can use to like bid on more dogs. So that's a pretty interesting concept. You have abilities on the dogs, and they're going to help you earn points too. But the big thing you want to do is you want to take them for a walk, and you're going to walk them through this park. And the park has all sorts of little things that you can pick up, sticks and toys, and those things are going to help you draft more dogs. You also want to collect dogs strategically because at the end of the game, you're going to score points for certain types of dogs. Some will score higher than others. And so the game's just kind of all about drafting dogs, taking them for walks, collecting all the victory points you can, and making sure you have the right dogs at the end of the game, and making sure they're all walked too. That's a very important part. I'm not really huge on bidding in auction games to begin with, so that was kind of like whatever. The theme to me also is kind of whatever. Like, I'm one of those psychos who doesn't really like dogs. But they're all right. It just, I don't know. I never like had a strong affinity towards dogs as pets. And I'm a big thematic guy when it comes to board games. So like the theme didn't really capture me. And it's one of those games too where there's so much to go for and it all feels necessary. And so it kind of feels a little disjointed and chaotic when you're supposed to be building this kind of like clean dog walking machine. I suck at board games. That is not a big secret at this point. So again, you shouldn't judge a game based on that. And that's kind of why I want to give it another shot. But also, we're fans of lighter Euros. This is something we look for in games sometimes when you want that Euro feel, but you don't want to like bust out this big fucking game and have this big crunchy game on your table just taking up hours and hours. When you just want that light Euro feel. I want to like it for that reason. But mostly, my wife likes it. I don't want to tell her no when she wants to play it.
I hear you there. You know what? This is one that we had Dog Park for a review on the show, and I rated it very highly. I thoroughly enjoy this one because it is a light Euro. It definitely gives you the sensation of having to do a little bit of everything, especially like if you want to bid. But that bidding introduces something interesting whereby if we all want toy dogs and there's only one that's in the bidding that's up for grabs, I can bid 0, knowing that everybody else is going to bid a whole bunch. And yeah, I'll take whatever's left over, but I didn't have to bid anything. The walking is interesting and easy to grasp. You move 1 to 4, what is it? I think it's 1 to 4 steps, and you can't land on the same space as someone. You got to pass them. And if you land on their space, you got to give them one of your resources or something simple. I like that it's easy to learn. This is one that we've taken to our meetups. And if we have some people that are like, yeah, I don't know you, let's play a game. Well, this is one that I can break out and most people are going to like it. I'm with you. I don't have an affinity to dogs as a pet. I have nothing against them. My wife had a dog when we got together and when in the early parts of our marriage. She's since passed, poor Lala. But the theme doesn't necessarily grab me. I think if you're a dog lover, you're going to love this game. If you're not, it's still a pretty good little Euro and easy to learn and probably done and dusted in an hour and a half. Doesn't overstay its welcome, I felt.
Yeah, I look forward to playing it again. If for no other reason Jessica likes it, I would just like to like it too. Like most of the games on this list today, I'm just waiting for something to click, and hopefully it does, and that's why Dog Park is on my list of games to try again.
Game number 9.
All right, Bryce, my number 9. I promise you I'm not doing this, but this was another one that was played at a convention. And actually, I tried to play it at one convention. So we're on the way to Origins a couple years ago, and my friend Nikki, she volunteers to drive whenever we go. She has a big, a minivan, so we called it the War Wagon. And then she got War Wagon 2.0, and we're getting to the Pennsylvania border. We're on our way to Columbus, which is like 3 hours away. And I was like, you could tell from the way it was putting and sputtering. I was like, I will be shocked if we get to Origins today. And sure enough, we were on the West Virginia border. I could still see the sign. We're all on the side of the road because War Wagon 2.0 gave up, and I did not make it in time that evening for my playthrough of Blood on the Clock Tower. And I would have to wait an entire year for the next convention to actually get in a play of it. So Blood on the Clock Tower, this is a social deduction game. You're trying to deduce things using only words coming out of people's mouths. There are like a ton of different roles, something like 20. You can play this with a crowd. A whole classroom could play it. There's enough roles to go around. One person's the storyteller. They got this big fancy book with all these little tokens that they're dealing out to people, and that's your role. That's what you're going to be, etc., etc. The next morning, somebody's dead. And you've got to deduce who did it and why they did it. And that could mean that this person's the demon. Oh, but that person might not know because they're actually drunk. But this person's the seer. Think like werewolf on crack, basically. Oh, but the day just ended. Okay, everyone, close your eyes. And that storyteller goes around and they tap the demon on the shoulder. Demon opens their eyes and they point at someone, or demon points at who they want to kill, that kind of thing. Okay, you open your eyes for day 3 and this person's dead now. And once you're dead, you're actually not out of the game. You can still you still get to cast a vote. Yeah, there's a little voting system by which players can say, you know what, we think this is a demon. We're going to off them. And you can see if you got it right. Anywho, Blood on the Clocktower is a beloved game. It's got a cult following. I'm not huge on social deduction, but I don't mind it. I only played it once, and that one playthrough felt like I'm trying to figure out, how this is supposed to work. I was in a group of 12 people. The storyteller did a fantastic job. They taught it well, but you're inevitably looking over this reference sheet of the 15 different roles that might be at the table. And all the while, there's 2 people that know how to play. And I don't want to say they were quarterbacking it, but they were trying to help the group understand, okay, so we know that it couldn't have been this person because they said this. And if they said this, then that, etc. I love that it has the in-between days. You're allowed to get up and secretly talk to each other, because then it feels like, oh, we're making our own little clique. We're getting in on something. Oh, but I didn't realize I was in the clique with the demon, and he was leading me astray the whole time. It was exciting and it was fun. It was with all strangers. It's the kind of game that I feel like if I could do that with the gang that I used to work at a restaurant with, there's 15 of us that still hang out. We have a Christmas party every year with lifelong friends, I swear. And I haven't worked with any of them for a decade. Man, if we could break that out, casual gamers can figure it out enough that I think that it would just make for an evening of fun. Never set it up, though, and I think it deserves a second chance. Blood on the Clocktower. Do you know this one?
I know of it. It's funny. You're talking about social deduction games. The name itself, when I hear people say it, I just kind of cringe and I back away. But then I look at games that I own and I'm like, I own The Thing, I own Deception, I own a lot of these games that require social deduction. I do like them. I just don't ever realize I like them. Now, this one sounds like it's got a massive following. Like you said, this might be something that you don't just play, you experience it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it almost feels like a lifestyle game. At any given convention, they will have rooms that are set up just for Blood on the Clocktower. And there are people that will spend their entire convention. They pay for their ticket because that weekend I get to play 15 games of Blood on the Clocktower. That's what they're doing. You know what? If some people can love it that much, I'm sure it'll hit if I give it a second chance. Blood on the Clocktower.
All right. My number 9 is a game called Antimatter. It's antimatter, as in anti-up. This is kind of a strange one. It's a space-themed pick-up and deliver game, and it's also a poker game. You play as a deep space smuggling crew, and you have your own unique deck of cards. Everyone plays as a different crew. They get a different deck of cards. The deck of cards does something different. You play this crew one way, this crew the other way. The first half of every round, you're going to be moving your ships around the galaxy, and you're going to be jumping on board the planets, and you're going to be gaining their resources. As you're moving around, you can also pirate resources from other players. And the resources are in the form of poker chips. The second half of every round, then, is just a game of Texas Hold'em, using the resources you've collected throughout that round. It's a regular game of Texas Hold'em until it's not. The cards in your hand from your crew can affect the game in your favor. Sometimes it'll take cards out of the flop and switch them. Sometimes you'll play 2 games at once. Sometimes you'll take a card out of your opponent's hand. All sorts of chaos is happening. Basically, the first to X number amount of space credits from all this smuggling and poker playing is going to be the winner. Here's what I didn't like, and I'll start with what I love. I love poker. I grew up playing video poker when I was a little kid, and then graduated to 5-card, and then Texas Hold'em. I was one of those weirdos who, when he had nothing to do, watched poker on TV. But I don't think I like my poker messed with. You're doing your pick up and deliver thing every round, and then all of a sudden it's interrupted by this game of poker, which isn't really a game of poker. It's like all this chaos and shit happening. That also makes the pick up and deliver aspect of the game kind of weak. There's not a lot to it, if I'm being honest. Why I want to give this game another chance, though, is I think that kind of flatness was because it was a 2-player game. I think the game wants you to run around and steal from each other, because then it makes winning that poker hand all that more important. Because if you pirated a bunch of things and then someone stole them from you, it's like, okay, now I have to play cards and I have to play it well. And it puts a lot more tension into that area of the game. So I think with more players, it could be more fun.
This has a nice presence. At least the artwork does. I gotta say, I agree with you when you said, I don't like my poker messed with. I think sometimes game designers will take something that's familiar, like we'll say Texas Hold'em in this case, and they say, okay, how can I tinker with that? And it's like, you know what? You don't need to tinker with that. That is a good thing already. It works and people love it because of what it is, not what you're going to turn it into. Whenever you incorporate a card that says like, okay, I can mess with the turn or the river, it's like, well, no, you're not supposed to be able to. I'm familiar with this back half of the game because I've played enough Hold'em to know how to do this the right way. And whenever you incorporate those, it just takes me out of it. It's like, well, that's dumb. Why should you be able to? I get it. It's part of the game. But to me, once you start incorporating a second game, it almost feels like two different games being mashed into one. And the one portion that I'm familiar with, well, now I'm not familiar with. I'd be interested in giving this a try. I'm intrigued by what you're saying, but it sounds like it's got an uphill battle to win me over.
It has one to win me over as well. Right now, it kind of strikes me as a restaurant that's trying to serve both tacos and burgers. Mm-hmm. Neither of them are probably going to be very good. However, I like the concept enough, and I spent a fuck ton of money on it, if I'm being completely honest. That's why Antimatter is on my list of games that deserve another shot.
Game number 10.
Bryce, I grew up on... Have you ever played Axis and Allies?
I know of it, never played it.
Okay, so it's like it's the next step up from Risk. There's a game designed by Larry Harris Jr. That's the game that put him on the map. And he came out with one several years ago. 2019 it's telling me. And it's a game called War Room. War Room has this gigantic circular board of the entire world. This is a World War II game, and I don't play many of them, but I love World War II as a theme. War Room is a game whereby you have all of these pieces on this gigantic world map. The presentation is beautiful. You've got 4 Axis powers, you've got 4 Allied powers, countries, and they're each controlled by a player. You've got a booklet, and the booklet has a little graph in it, and you're meant to take a pencil and you write in the graph. And what you're doing is you're programming your movement. So if I want people to move from Germany, and I want them to go east, and I want them to leave Berlin, and I want them to go to Eastern Europe, I'll write down which troop stack. So I'm going to have my artillery and my infantry. I want them to go from Germany. I want them to go to Europe. That's going to be the first move that I execute. I don't know what the person before me and the person after me and the person after me, what they're going to be doing. I do know that I don't care what Japan's doing. They're my ally and they're at the other side of the world. USA can't touch me. I don't care what they're going to be doing. Russia's the threat. So my second order, when it comes back to me again, and I've pre-mapped this, I'm going to have we'll say the troops from Finland move to Norway. My third order, troops from Norway going into Karelia, etc. So you're basically planning out, here's how I want the round to happen. Then everybody closes their books once they've mapped out on their chart their round. So we'll call it a hidden movement pre-programming game. And I love thematically what that means. It means I can move these things out of Eastern Europe, not knowing that, we'll say the UK player intends on invading there, and I'm leaving because, well, it's war. I don't know what they're doing. I love that conceptually. And I know exactly what went wrong. And that is that I was controlling the Axis and I had to do the pre-programmed movement for all of the Axis. But it's like Germany, Japan, and I want to say they incorporate Italy and I think China, one other, whatever the case is. I had to look through 4 different booklets and pre-programmed movements before a round was ready. It took me half an hour just to figure out, okay, what am I moving this turn? I enjoyed it for what it was, but there were a couple of flaws. One, it needs to be played with the full complement of players. That might introduce downtime as a flaw, but I still think for the mental capacity, the amount of cognitive drainage that it places on you for playing more than one country, you need to play with the full complement of players. And 2, this thing bills itself as playing in anywhere from 2 to 6 hours. We had it set up. We started playing at 11 in the morning, and come 7 o'clock in the evening, we were nowhere near. We were nowhere near hitting the end game conditions. It was going on and on to the point where combat would happen and I'd be like, oh God, we got to do this again. And I think maybe sharing that load with multiple players, having 6 or more, might make it a little more enjoyable. Enough so that it's one that I'm willing to give another try.
The one benefit from looking at this game I can see is that unlike Risk, it's too big to table flip. So you at least have that going for you.
You got to be working on gains. You got to have biceps if you're going to table flip this. The board that comes with the game is the diameter of that thing is probably 3 feet. You can get the upgraded massive neoprene or cardboard, and it's like 4 feet. It is so big, but I like that. I love that it's a table hog. Just didn't love having to manage 4 different countries worth of pre-programmed movement. It was so hard.
Yeah, that sounds like quite the task. I like World War II myself. War games, though, always seem like such a time investment that, quite frankly, I don't have the attention span for.
Well, I'm hoping I can sum up the attention span one more time to give a second chance someday to War Room.
All right, 10th and final game on the list before we get to that final bonus +1. This is a game called Corrosion. This is a fairly heavy steampunk theme, engine building, contract fulfillment game, all about maximizing your efficiency. And I do mean maximizing. This game gets thinky. What you're going to do is you're going to draft different engineers and you're going to put them into your hand. Then you're going to play them into your factory. And what these engineers are going to do is they're going to help you build these small machines. You're going to turn your factory wheel to activate stuff. Those machines will activate and they will give you gears and other abilities that you need to build bigger and better machines. However, these small machines, they rust away after a certain point because it's all steamy and like the game runs on Steam or something. I can't really remember, but there's Steam in there. Mm-hmm. So these old machines rust away. So you want to build chrome machines that can survive it. And the chrome machines are going to generate big points for you as well as give you even bigger things to build better machines and so on and so forth. This is all about efficiency. You got to set up the right stuff at the right time to build the best machine to give you all the points. What I don't like about this one, and again, I have said I am the dunce cap in the room. I can admit that. My brain does not fire for board games naturally the way it does for a lot of people in this hobby. It takes me a little extra time to get there. But for me, this game just had so much to focus on. And even with my own personal lack of ability aside, I think this game has too much going on for its own good. There are some small finicky elements in it, such as having to pay attention to the moisture in your factory. It kind of makes it hard to get into the fun of the game, which is turning that wheel, programming those machines, setting up big plays, really feeling like you've got this factory down and locked in. You really have to take time to get to know this one, which is fine, but it might be too much of a slog to get there. And what I'm worried about, or what I was worried about when I played it, was by the time we learn the game and the ins and outs of it, it will have been such an exhaustive journey that we don't want to come back to it. However, the concept and the theme here, I find to be fantastic. I love steampunk. This is another game where once you get it, it should flow nicely, and then you can get into the fun of it. It becomes more than about trying the different combos and the different machines and the different crew. That's really what the game's about, so hopefully that journey isn't too arduous. Plus, the game is full of all-female workers, and it's kind of fun to boss all those women around. No, I'm kidding. Kidding aside. I want to like it. I just haven't gotten there yet.
All female engineers in this one it has. That explains why the machines are always breaking. Am I right? Corrosion's one that we actually reviewed pretty early on, and I think we all had the same thought process in that we liked the concept of having to like constantly check up on your engine and plan a turn or two ahead because I know this piece is going to go and I'm going to have to get something to go in its place. We found the engineers were remarkably important. Those chrome engine, like the chrome bits that you could put at the bottom of the board, were really pivotal. I haven't played this one in some time. It's one that I wouldn't mind getting back to, but it didn't blow me away. Almost like the final product wasn't as good as like the sum of its parts would have you anticipating. It should have been, wow, blow my socks off. But instead it was, oh, that's good. It was good, not great. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, I'm wondering if it goes back to what I said about like having just too many little things going on, almost kind of like as a distraction to what the game should be.
Yes, and you know what? That's evident when you play with more than like, I think it's best at 2 or 3. We did it at a few different player counts, and we did it at 4 one time, and holy cow, this thing says an hour to 2 hours on the box, not with 4 players. Nope. It went like, I want to say it was over 3 hours we were playing. Like,
oh, easily.
It did outstay its welcome by the end of it. Even though you're doing new things things and you're adding new parts, there are a lot of maintenance turns. Like, okay, I know that this part's going to go, so I need to collect these bits and I need to get a gear placed over here. So I need to do this. So I'm taking a maintenance turn. I'm doing a thing just to collect things in anticipation for when that thing goes so that I can replace it with this thing. So the big exciting turn is replacing it with this thing. That's 4 turns from now. That impression that left is like, oh, it's good in that you have to really put your brain to task. You got to think when you're playing. It's bad in that, the exciting moments tend to take a while to get their payoff to connect.
Absolutely. And hopefully the better you get with this game, the less turns like that you see. Because, you're really getting into the maximization of it. That's what I'm hoping for. That's why this game is the 10th spot on my list of games that need a second chance.
All right.
All right, so those were the 10 games we feel deserve another shot. We are going to take a pause here just to refill our cups. We have nothing for you today like we usually do, just a brief pause. When we come back, we're going to talk about the games we feel deserve a second chance the most, like the game we really can't wait to get to the table again. So stick around, we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. We have one more game apiece to talk about. This is the game we most want to get back to the table. This game deserves a second chance above and beyond all other games. Patrick, what do you got?
This is a game called Alice is Missing. The concept is that you are these very young adults, and the brothers come home because Alice, his sister, has turned up missing. And the concept of the game is you're Alice's companions. There's the best friend, there's the boy that wishes he was the boyfriend, there's the boyfriend, there's the girl that didn't really like Alice. You know what I mean? Like, you fit into all of these high school type cliches. Those are the people, the characters that you play as. Everybody gets one. And the game knows that it's meant to be played over text or online, so they have a means by which you can do so. It also comes with a soundtrack that is captivating. All communication normally is done via text. Everybody at the table, and they even say, change your name. You're not going to be Patrick. If you're playing James, the character, set your name to James temporarily, create a group, and so that you can all chat with each other. And then sometimes you may want to directly chat with just one other person, not with the whole group. So be mindful of whether you're sending something to the group chat or something privately. And it doesn't dictate how you're going to play, but there's a little bit of setup at the beginning whereby you're going to say, make something up. Why is it that you don't like Alice? What is it that you know about Alice that other people don't know? And then sometimes the game will give you a card, and it'll say like, oh, you're aware of this, that, Alice was last seen here. No one else knows that, and you need to keep it a secret. The little things like that. And that's not for sake of the game mechanisms working. That's for sake of theme. So the game starts. The game lasts for 90 minutes. And you have 10 minutes. You have a few different cards, a location card, and you have a character card that are flipped up. And it's like, okay, play with these. And you have 10 minutes. Start chatting with each other. It gives you these story elements to help your creative juices come up with something like the next step in the story. And at first we're like, okay, so what do we do? What am I supposed to be doing? And 10 minutes in, it's like, okay, flip up some new cards. And then 10 minutes later, flip up some new cards. And as you get closer to the end of that hour and a half, it goes like in 5-minute intervals. And whenever you flip up new cards, sometimes it's only this person gets to flip up and see the cards. Nobody else does. The game is not spoon-fed to you, and here's why. What happens, the fate of Alice in our playthrough was fully dependent on what we made it to be. And naturally, ours culminated, as I think most do, with we were outside of like an abandoned barn, and Alice was in there, and was she dead, was she alive, and our 90 minutes were up. And it was kind of up to our own interpretation of, well, wait a minute, did we find a body? Like, we had all this implication that maybe she's alive, but maybe she's dead. Like, where did it end? When we talked about it on the show, inevitably, one of the things that we like to look at is, was this game fun? And I had to be really honest with myself. And I said, you know what? No, it was depressing. It was real. It was captivating. You ever watch a drama or a movie that's just horribly sad, and you can't help but love the movie by the time you're done with it, even though it wasn't fun, it wasn't a romp, there was nothing about it that had you laughing or cheering. It was just sad, but you were captivated. You couldn't look away. That's kind of what happened with this Alice is Missing. So it deserves a second chance, I feel, because I gave it this, my final impression was, no, that wasn't fun. Wow, that was profound. It was real. It struck a nerve, but it wasn't fun. It's so hard to quantify that I really want to give it a second chance. Maybe as the person who learns it and introduces it to a new group, to some friends that I've had for a long time, or maybe new people that I've never gamed with, just to see how they soak it in. This is, again, you won't be able to find it on Board Game Geek. It's actually on RPG Geek. It's a game called Alice is Missing.
I'm listening to you describe this one. And because it's so open-ended on how, the players create the story as they go, and given the subject matter of this girl is missing and you're probably going to find her dead, it seems to me that part of the game, or part of the experience, I should say, is kind of giving a window into the people you're playing with and how dark they're willing to go.
Yeah.
And what places they're willing to go while you play. So you're not just playing this game and yeah, maybe the setting and the theme is kind of dark and sad, but also you're learning things about people too, where you might sit there at the end of the game and be like, well, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens. It's weird in that you're not actually playing anything. You don't necessarily win or lose. There's not like a rule structure whereby when it's your turn, you do this. It's very open-ended. Sometimes you'll be the one that gets to look at 4 cards that no one else gets to look at. That's it, la-di-da. You incorporate them into the story anyway. It's just up to your interpretation of how you want to incorporate a van and a knife and a jacket with a hole in it that used to belong to Alice. Okay, how do you want to make, where are you going to take this? Interestingly, it says in the rulebook, let people know what they're getting into. Be aware that there are some things that if you bring up, people at the table you might not realize have potentially experienced that sort of thing in real life. So be aware that you might strike a nerve with someone if you bring up okay, Alice is missing. A topic could be rape, for example. Yeah. And it's go over ahead of time whether or not the table's willing to go there, because that could really strike a nerve with someone. And me coming into this is oh, come on. All the reviewers say, oh, it's so in your head and it's going to be a mind blow. Get out of here. I'm going to sit here and have a laugh at this thing. But no, it actually did. And the game also recommends, when it's done, take 10 minutes and just talk about what just happened. And I don't indulge in that either, because I put up this big wall around my emotions, and I don't let people in too often. But others at the table were, and to an extent I was. And like you said, it was very neat. Through this text-only format, you're able to learn so much about the other characters in the game and also the people that are basically giving those characters life. It was cool. It was an A+ experience, and I'd be glad to give it another go.
Yeah, that definitely sounds more like an experience, dude.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Enough with Alice is Missing. I'm missing out on what you gave us 10 solid, want to give another go. I'm on the edge of my seat. I paid for the whole seat. I only need the edge. What is the number one game that you need to give a second chance?
All right. My number one game most deserving of a second chance is Windward. Now, I know that there's some controversy around this game because people were waiting for their Kickstarter copies and then everybody else was able to pick it up retail.
They just got it at Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, that was me. I was one of those everyone else's. But It is what it is. This is a high-action pick-up-and-deliver type of game with dice combat rolled into it. So in Windward, you're going to play as the captain of a ship on this giant gas planet. You're going to use the wind that's blowing around on this planet, and it's constantly changing directions, to move your ship around. And you're hunting for these giant sky whales. They're called cresters, but they just look like big whales. You're going to kill them, you're going to harvest their teeth or their bones, and then you're going to fly back to base and turn them in for glory or points. You build up your crew along the way, you build up your ship along the way, you draft these cards, and they give you helpful abilities while you go out hunting. You can even pirate from other captains as you go, and the first to a certain amount of glory points is going to be the winner. What I didn't like about this game, well, this is kind of why it remains number one, my top game I want to see played again. I don't remember why I don't like this game. All I remember is I didn't like it, but for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. My best guess, I didn't like the way the wind interacted with the ships, or I didn't like that ships moved at different levels. One of the ships maybe felt clunky or useless. I honestly don't remember. I love everything about this game. The idea of it gets me excited to play again. And that's essentially why it deserves another chance, because I must have been drinking or something. I cannot figure out for the life of me why I didn't like this game. It's adventure on the board. You're hunting things down. You're pirating from each other. I know not everyone likes dice combat. It puts me on the edge of my seat. Sometimes it goes your way. Sometimes it doesn't, but you can manipulate the dice. You can add hits to your total. There's all sorts of things you can do. It just sounds like so much fun. Plus, this game has a ton going on for it. There are a lot of different ways that you can play the game. You can do co-op. You can do a campaign. They have different special scenarios that you can plug into any given game. The board is modular, so you can shake things up. I got to get Windward played again. I just have to.
As I recall, this game gives you a bit of agency in how you're going to play too. Like, you can spec out your ship, and you can get there's crewmates that you can hire that do various things so that you're doing something different. I like it when a game gives you an opportunity to do a different strategy than what everyone else is doing. It's not who can do it the most efficient. Instead, it's no, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to pick these pieces that are going to let me play out the game this way and see if I can do that better than you can do your slow slogging big payoff method that you're shooting for with your pieces that you're picking up. This struck me as we'll say a smaller sandbox. It wanted to be a sandbox like a Western Legends, Isaiah, but this one has a more restraining rule set in that you have to be respectful of where the wind's blowing, and you're trying to get those bones from the cresters, and you cash those in for points. As I recall, that was the big pick up and deliver payoff moment of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just said something that made me think why people may not have liked this game as much as they probably would have if it were a little more open sandboxy. And I think that was it. I think you hit the nail on the head. It passes itself off, at least initially, as this game where you can go wherever you want, do whatever you want. But then you're guided by the wind, and you have to pay attention to crew morale and stuff if you're out there too long. And so it does kind of put limits on something that maybe should feel a little more open world.
Perhaps.
It's never a thought I gave it, but it's a good point. It still doesn't matter to me, man. I think I don't mind the limitations. If I want something that big and open world, I'll play Western Legends, which is an awesome game, by the way. I like the idea of hunting the whales down and all this cool shit. So, again, I was drunk. I don't know. I don't know what I don't like about it, dude. I don't know. I really don't.
But, drinking? No.
I know. The guy who does the drink podcast. Weird. And, like you said, you can play the game however you want, even within that rule set. It starts pretty much, everyone's starting out the same way, but after about a turn or two, you guys are all on different paths. And maybe somebody is playing better than you are, but you know what? You can just pirate their shit. And so it keeps everyone honest, and that's really cool. So there you have it, both my list and Patrick's list, 2 top 10s plus 2 extra games that we feel deserve another chance. A lot of good games talked about today. It's been a big show, but man, I'm having a lot of fun. Patrick, how about you?
I have to wonder, is this going to end up being your longest episode to date?
Probably.
Yeah, all right. We did it. That was kind of the goal. Whenever I said, we're going to do 11 each. Man, we're going to keep this one rolling. This was fun. I appreciate you having me on for it.
Not a problem, man. Thank you again for showing up. But we have one more segment to do, and we're going to get to it right now. All right, so we've had a long time in this show to experience O'Neill's Jim's signature blend. I did not drink it this time because it's very, very late, but I have been drinking it all day up until this point. You got a cup of it right now.
I did. It's gone.
You did. It's empty. Okay. All right. So, Patrick, what did you think about this coffee?
Well, let me start off here. I am a coffee lover. So, whether a coffee is good or bad, I don't know that it's like saying, what'd you think about this chocolate? Well, it's chocolate. I like it. This is good. This is good coffee. It's a nice medium. I tend to like coffees that are bold. I don't like super weak. This didn't strike me as too weak. It didn't have that bitter acidic, sometimes you have a sip and you're like, oh man, I can do one cup, but that acid, the acidity of the beans starting to get to me. No, this was bold without having that. This one hits a spot. I got like 3/4 of the bag still up there. Dude, so I'm a lot closer. You're the other side of the country. You got yours in like 2 days. Mine took 2 days. Their shipping is insane.
I was not expecting it to happen that fast. I ordered it and 2 days later, yeah.
There it is.
At my door.
So I've been working on it in the mornings. My wife's been enjoying it as well. And you know what? I did not know that O'Neill's, as I gather, this is like a cafe. It's not like a warehouse or a big production facility. It is a cafe, and they just so happen to have an online presence whereby you can buy their coffee. So they're about 2 hours northwest of me. And where they're located is like the other side of Pittsburgh, past the airport. Like it's an area that if you're not going to Cleveland or some, west of here, Michigan or Detroit, if you're not going up that way, there's no reason that I would ever be up there. So I didn't even know it existed, and this is delightful.
Yeah, I like it too. There's a very, very nice toastiness right up front when you take a sip. It's kind of that signature flavor from a lighter roast. You like bold coffee. I do too. I'm a big, dark, bold coffee guy. I like the full body. I like the whole 9 yards with that. Mm-hmm. So I tend to stay away from the lighter fare. But that toastiness is very, very pleasant. And then from there, for me, it just kind of becomes coffee. Nothing overly stand out about it, but nothing bad either. It's like you take a sip and you're like, yes, that's coffee.
Yes.
It's good coffee. It's good coffee. And the thought I have with it is it seems like a blank canvas for those who like to add sugar or creamer or milk because it's got such a reliable coffee flavor. Mm-hmm. You could put pretty much whatever you wanted in there and it's going to complement it so long as you don't overdo it with the creamer. I know some people will drink milkshakes basically that kind of taste like coffee. But yeah, I tried it black and I was like, oh, yep, coffee. Nice toastiness, not too acidic, coffee. And I was like, well, let me throw some sugar in there. It was fine. A little creamer. It was good. It seems to bring out whatever it is you put in there, and it was very nice. It's a great cup of coffee for those who like to put stuff in their coffee.
Where I think it is a success for me, and I can't wax poetic about, I listen to you describe a beer, and I get, I start salivating in the car, and I'm like, what the hell? So maybe a good way that I can quantify it is I want, if I'm going to have a cup of coffee, I just want the coffee. I don't want a hint of vanilla. I don't want overly bold or super bitter or something super fancy. The risk of going with a small coffee shop is you're going to get that coffee shop's take on coffee. I don't want your take on coffee. I want coffee and I want it to be good. And the only, the truest of crimes that you can commit with me, because I'm not a snob when it comes to coffee. I like most of them, is if it tastes like I'm having coffee flavored water. It's just too light. You know what I mean? Or you didn't put enough grinds in a filter before you dripped it in. And this didn't do that. It makes a nice, rich, this is what it's supposed to taste like. They nailed it in that regard. Now, if you're looking for Starbucks has a bolder flavor that has some acidity, and Dunkin' Donuts has I'm not going to try and get into the flavor profiles of each of these coffees, but they have their own unique flavor profile. This is just coffee. This is what it's supposed to taste like, and I appreciate it. That's why I said, let's just go with the signature blend. We're not going to try for this. We're not going to try for that. Let's just keep it simple and see if they can handle that. And I thought they did.
I think so too. And I'm actually really impressed that they found a way to do that because there's a lot to growing coffee. There's elevations and moisture levels and all this. And the way you do it will bring out different flavors in the coffee bean. And typically with the lighter fare, you're going to get something that's a little more acidic. You're going to get something that's a little more fruity or floral. You might get some chocolate, but not too often. That typically is at lower elevations than higher. I can tell that this coffee was probably grabbed from not the highest point because it's not overly floral, but definitely not the lowest. And yet they found a way to just keep the flavor pure. I'm blown away by that. You would expect there to be like some sort of fruity thing going on, which is not bad if you are looking for that. Like, I know you said you don't like vanilla hints and stuff. I do, but it depends. Like, if you put the vanilla in there, that's god awful. But
tastes artificial.
Yeah, it's artificial as shit. And that's why like flavored coffees just, I mean, they hurt my stomach just thinking about it. But if you get the vanilla out of just the natural growth of the coffee bean, that's great. It's an aftertaste in there somewhere or something, the aroma somewhere. The only thing this coffee has is that, like I said, that toastiness up front. It's really impressive that these beans probably came from a higher elevation, and yet you just have this solidly reliable coffee flavor.
Well, I don't know what else to say other than I'm going to keep enjoying the rest of the bag that I have, and I wouldn't mind getting another from O'Neill's. Not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. In fact, because they ship anywhere at the speed of light, apparently, like Pittsburgh to Tucson, I don't even know if light can travel as fast as that coffee did, and that was insane. If you're looking for a cup of coffee that just gives you this reliable coffee flavor so you can add your creamers or whatever the hell you add to your cup, look them up online, man. You can't go wrong with this one.
Hey, this is Jessica, covering for Bryce from Behind the Bar. Brew, food, and mixology tips for a better drinking experience. If you're a longtime listener of the show, then by now you know that not all coffees are created equal. Each brew brings its own unique flavor profiles, aromas, and body to the table, and that's a great thing. Whether you like a crisp, mild brew with fruity undertones, a bold, earthy, and bitter cup of joe with the aroma of chocolate, or even just a straightforward baseline coffee like today's brew, there's something out there for everyone. And that's even before you add all the milk, cream, sugar, ice, and foam, I guess, for all you aging hipsters out there. Today, we're going to talk about exactly how the coffee berry achieves such a natural variety through the many different ways in which it is grown, prepared, and brewed. Honestly, the art of coffee, and yes, it is an art, could be a whole podcast on its own. A tad ambitious for us, but hopefully after today, you'll be equipped with some general knowledge to help you select your next perfect cup. We're going to learn all about what to search for right now from Behind the Bar. We'll begin by repeating that yes, coffee is actually a fruit, not a bean. More specifically, a cherry. And the beans, as they are called, are actually the fruit's seed, harvested at just the right time to get the most flavor, texture, and aroma out of them. We'll call them beans for familiarity's sake, but now you have a great piece of trivia knowledge, if nothing else. Now let's talk about the importance of climate and elevation. The coffee plant cannot grow and flourish unless it is in a warm, tropical climate. This is why all coffee is grown on the same strip of earth around the world, no more than 30 degrees north or south from the equator. From there, different elevations within the area become the key factor in the types of beans and flavors you can expect to see, or rather, taste. Beans grown at around an elevation of 2,500 feet will produce a more earthy taste. At 3,000 feet, more nutty flavor notes will begin to emerge. 4,000 feet will produce either a citrus or chocolate profile, depending on the type of bean. Finally, at around 5,000 feet, you'll begin to see, or rather taste, floral and berry notes. Elevation also affects the acidity of every coffee plant as well. The higher the elevation, the more acidic the coffee. Different types of beans handle certain elevations better than others. And while there are a wide variety of beans out there in the world, the majority of coffee is made from one of two types of beans, Arabica and Robusta. We may explore some of the other ones sometime in the future, but for today, we'll be sticking to these two. Arabica beans are what the world primarily drinks. Up to 60% of all coffee is made up of Arabica beans. This is due to their wide range of flavor possibilities. They take on the flavors of their particular elevation better than any other bean out there. If you're not drinking Arabica, then you're likely drinking Robusta. These beans are sturdier and maintain a much more earthy and bitter profile, regardless of elevation. Whichever beans you go with, once harvested and processed, the next step is to roast them. The roasting process not only gets beans to take on the familiar look we all associate with coffee, but also adds certain additional elements of flavor and body, depending on the type of roast. Light roast coffee will typically gain a soft, toasted flavor with a bit of a tangy punch. If the beans have been grown in higher elevations, their floral and fruity flavors will really stand out here. Light roasts typically hold the most caffeine as well. Medium roast coffee will bring about a more balanced taste, not as toasty and with a sturdy chocolate and or nutty flavor depending on the bean. This is also the roast that typically produces the strongest aromas. Dark roasts bring out all the bitter, earthy, and chocolate elements, as well as add big kicks of smoke and spice. The body of this roast is typically full, thick, and powerful. Oh shit, now I'm thinking of something else. Anyway, there are other types of roasts as well. Hybrids, such as a city roast, which is somewhere between medium and dark. Bold roast is a dark roast on steroids. And decaf roast, typically advertised as dark roast, is a bean roasted so heavily that most traces of caffeine have burned away. These roasting processes are curated even more specifically to bring about things such as French or Italian roasts. In fact, the roasting process is probably the most essential step in the coffee process, as it finalizes just exactly what the coffee will have to offer. Once you have your preferred roast, it's time to brew your coffee. Now, there are dozens of different brewing techniques that you can use, some of which have their own list of variations within them. We're only going to cover a few of the most common and popular ones here today: pour over, drip, French press, espresso, and cold brew. And yes, we purposely left out the Keurig method as it is a complete coffee abomination suitable only for those in the lowest depths of hell. Plus, no one really likes or prefers it, and if you do, who the fuck hurt you? The first thing to consider is the size of your coffee grounds. As you've heard me say before, size isn't always everything, but it definitely helps. The size of grinds you want will depend on your preferred brewing method. The finer the grind, the quicker the coffee will be extracted from it. Water temperature does play a role as well, but it's not entirely crucial. We're just going to go with the good old-fashioned boiling point of 212 degrees. Espressos require an ultra-fine, practically powdered grind, as the brewing process is very fast. You'll need to extract all the flavor you can in a short amount of time. If you're using a drip machine, then you'll want to aim for the standard medium grind. This brewing process has more of a slow but steady pace. Every drip machine is different, so the medium grind is a safe bet all around. If you're not grinding your beans yourself, then this is what you'll most likely find when buying a bag of coffee at the grocery store. Pour over can get away with medium grinds, but since your water will be moving through your beans a tad faster than your average drip machine, and in larger waves, it's best to go just a tad finer if you can. Give that coffee grinder a few more seconds. For French pressed coffee, you'll want to grind your beans a little less, going for a coarse grind. This will leave your beans in rather large chunks, about the same size as table salt. Press techniques require steeping your grinds directly in your water from anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. You'll want that extraction to be a very slow process. For cold brew, you'll want your grinds to be even larger, as this steeping process will usually last overnight for several hours. An extreme coarse, roughly the size of peppercorns, is what you'll be aiming for. Now, once you have the coffee in your cup, what you do with it from there is up to you. Black, creamer, milk, sugar, protein powder, there's countless ways in which people take their coffee, so that's an adventure I'll leave up to you on your own. The takeaway here is to have a basic understanding of the necessary building blocks needed to create your next amazing cup of coffee. Looking to try a cold brewed floral roast? How about a chocolatey bold espresso? Maybe you're out to make a nice snappy fruit-laced press. Whatever your next cup of coffee is, you can now feel more confident in your selection of beans, grinds, and methods. Hopefully, your next favorite is just a few quick roasts away. And with that, I raise my glass, toast to your health, and hope to see you next time from behind the bar. Cheers.
All right, that was a huge episode. This is usually where Jessica makes some sort of size queen joke or some such. We miss Jessica today. We do. But you know what, Patrick?
This episode's got a lot of girth.
Yeah, that it does. Thank you, man, for coming on and doing this. I've been a big fan of your show, and it's cool that we got to collaborate here. Hopefully, at some point in the future, I can return the favor.
It'd be delightful. You know what? We're hoping to maybe experiment with trying to like dabble into other shows, mainly because we want to shark their audience away from them and over to us. Naturally. So this was step one. This is ground zero, Bryce.
Yeah, this is how you take over the world. Go ahead and plug your show again, man. Tell people where they can find it and when they can find it.
If you're interested in Level Up, we're at www.levelupgamepodcast.com. You can find us on basically any podcast app. We're on all the social medias and whatnot. Recent episodes are Tirnanogue, and depending on when this episode goes live, you might be able to catch one more quest as episode 138. LevelUpGamePodcast.com.
Patrick, again, thank you for coming on board, man, and it was really fun talking games with you.
Pleasure's all mine, Bryce. Thank you.
All right. As for everyone else, thanks for tuning in. This has been the Game and Drink Connoisseurs podcast. I am the not as sexy or intelligent host. We'll bring her back next time, but in the meantime, we'll catch you later. Hey, Bryce, one more time here. Just wanted to let you know that Jessica will be back with me in 2 weeks, September the 9th. We'll be sitting down to talk about the Oregon Trail Journey to Willamette Valley. It is a tile laying game in which you're racing to the finish, feeding your family, and trying not to, of course, die of dysentery. It's the Oregon Trail, right? We're also going to be pairing it up with a delicious whiskey made primarily of peaches and plums and barley. It's kind of weird, but it's also going to be absolutely fantastic. So thanks for bearing with the sound today, and Jessica and I will see you again in 2 weeks.